This is your daily briefing, and you're most welcome to it. We've got thoughts on Nuno, thoughts on Kane, a little bit on Tongi, and Levy trying to perhaps pull off the most ill-conceived yet, or most ill-conceived this week, short change transfer deal. So, with no further ado, yesterday we were in for a bit of a treat, weren't we? We got Nuno Espirito Santo's very first press conference. It's been reported very differently by different people. I think that would be the fairest way to assess it. The mainstream press have described it in kind of just, technical terms. He said this, he was asked that. And actual football fans have, unless I've missed something, universally torn it to pieces. And some of the commentary from the public wasn't very nice. I have to say, I feel genuinely sorry for the chap. And the straw that I'm clutching here is that beneath the stupidity, beyond the poison chalice, we have a man here who perhaps, do you remember Michael Caine turned up in Jaws 3, and he's made some stinkers of films over the years, but he was asked about Jaws 3 in particular, and his response was, there comes the dog, he's fought his way past the cushion and he's in. His response to having made Jaws 3 was that it put, I think, one or two of his children through private education. So if that's what Nuno's doing here, that's fine. And I don't expect him to come out and say that, obviously, to the audience. But typical examples of what people said. Seems like we give the same script for every manager to read. That came from Zeus, 1882. Hotspur Hooked said, it's like when we finally sign someone and then, inverted commas, welcome, blah, blah, blah. What are you looking forward to here at Spurs? To which they get the reply, well, the incredible stadium, of course, as well as the training ground, which I just got a tour of, and it's all amazing. David McConkey, which is John, says here, I'm nearly sure every season whoever our manager has been has said this and has never been backed. So, doing the same thing, or saying the same thing, expecting different results. It's a twist on the Einstein line. And Jesper Borch Sorensen starting to realise why Levy gave the green light to this new puppet. I got sent some great bits of artwork yesterday by a couple of people, and I'll be popping those into the community section of this, so you can use those as you see fit. Harry Kane was a notable part of the discussion with Nuno, and it reminded me, because I'm old, it reminded me of watching a Letterman show 10, 15 years ago, maybe more. And he just did as one of his quickie jokes, on the desk there. And he said, breaking news. And this was just when the whole thing of a grown-up going into a coffee shop that was it was all corporate, identity to these places, and it was just walked in. You could go in and you'd say you'd wanted a low fat latte frappe appuccino or whatever, and he did this joke that Starbucks were hiring, and they were looking for guys who could keep a straight face whilst charging $5 for a coffee. And it struck me that as Nuno was reading out his lines about Harry Kane, that perhaps one of the requirements from Daniel Levy was that the guy was actually going to be able to deliver this as if he, with a degree of integrity. So we got the new gaffer was emphatic that Kane remained a Tottenham player and would stay that way. I'm looking forward to him joining the group, start working together. I have no doubts in my mind. I have no doubts. He was pressed several times, I have to say, and rightly so. But the press, I thought, were extremely gentle with him. I do get a sense, and I've said it to you before, especially at Hotspur away, I don't know if the mood will change when they've replaced Mr. Feldstein, but it's like you can only sail so close. I'm not talking about standing up and screaming and shouting or being rude or using profanities, but I think a sharper line of questioning could have a place in these press conferences. And some of the questions that are read out, they're just dreadful, and I think we get better questions. It was like, with the BBC did the daily COVID briefings, and we had Beth Rigby and all these other awful caricatures of journalists asking these awful questions, trying to get these gotcha moments. And the questions improved dramatically when they opened it up to the public. And I'd actually suggest that. I think that some of you out there, there's people on forums, and they're coherent characters. They can ask questions which need to be answered, and they can ask them in a civilized way. Why isn't there a platform for people to be involved in that respect? So anyway, Nuno was pretty robust. But this all goes against contrasts horribly, or rather uncomfortably, with the interview that Kane did with Gary Neville. And if the Neville thing was just a kind of putting a toe in the water, then there's a kind of that will coat or tar Harry Kane with a certain degree of foolish naivety and frankly just being a time waster. He's a bit of a tyre kicker. Oh well, I wondered if there was much interest, and I'm sceptical that Nuno speaks for Harry Kane here. Speaking for Daniel Levy, unfortunately, as we all know, isn't really worth a damn. Kane's 27, he's 28 this month, just for those of you joining us late, and were he to remain, he would be in the same squad of players, essentially the same squad of players that failed Pochettino, failed Mourinho, and staggered into 7th place last season. And speaking of that finish, it's a pertinent point to mention that you've then got a scenario which equally doesn't make sense, where you have one of the world's greatest footballers, strikers, but there's more to him these days than just being an out-and-out front man. And he's playing in the world's third tier European competition. It doesn't fit. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. It stinks. And I can only imagine that Kane and Levy are on a collision course. To which end we've got some Kane whispers. And I'm hoping there's going to be more of this, because we had a little bit from Patrick, his father, and Charlie, his brother. A colleague of mine was under the impression that telephone calls had not been answered by Daniel Levy from Charlie and co. And, Nuno shuts this down, but the Telegraph and the Mail between them are running with the fact that some members of the England squad believe that Harry Kane will down tools, and that the Telegraph has come out. Telegraph, Matt Law, sometimes no times at all with that guy. No disrespect, but you know what you get up to. That and I know there's been a lot of, he's not like that, he's a gent, Harry, he's got Tottenham in his heart and all the rest of it. I just think that there's too much here that just doesn't make sense. And let's face it, Gareth Bale, nobody hated him, and he pulled essentially the same routine, didn't get involved in bits and pieces before he went to Madrid in 2013 for £86 million. Even the ghosts had enough. Manchester City's situation, all I would suggest to you is, do you really believe that they're going to go into next season without a striker? You could argue that they did that whilst Aguero was still with them, but I don't know, does Pep want to play with a false number 9 forever? Who knows? Tanguy Dembele. This comes from Julien Maynard, who is a French journalist who I think gets good bits and pieces now and again. Club record signing, £55 million, and been linked with being one of these, bundle deals for Houssem Aouar. It can't be pronounced Aouar, surely. He's not from Somerset, is he? Aouar. Anyway, we'll find out, won't we? And apparently it's come out via the agents or interested parties that that Tongate would be open to a move, but he'd be interested in staying within London and, understandably, wanting top-flight football, which obviously Lyon, Olympique Lyonnais, cannot offer. I think there's going to be an awful lot of players hanging on for dear life. I wasn't going to mention the ESPN link about Harry Winks supposedly being given another chance. I think that is a bit of speculation there, based on the straightforward, sweet and simple logic that who in their right mind is going to pay anywhere approaching what Daniel Levy might want for him. And I think all parties at Tottenham would be happy if he just kind of ran his contract down at Spurs. The last one, and this is the dun 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 sort of Daniel Levy sketch we've got here for Skriniar. He's 26. He's at Inter, and according to La Interesta, if that's correct, Spurs made an offer of 30 million plus another 5 million in add-ons. So anyway, they didn't. The Italians apparently didn't waste any time in turning this down. But I just briefly, I'm no expert, but Transfermarkt, they're pretty good when it comes to prices. They have nice little tools that they use for monitoring where people are, and they have the boy valued at 60 million. So if the bid took place, and it wouldn't surprise me, I know Inter in a little bit of financial trouble, but as we learnt with the Grealish fiasco, if a man is drowning, generally speaking, he wants to make sure that the life buoy that you're throwing him is serviceable, is actually going to save him, opposed to just some spends on the way down to the bankruptcy court. So if true, and I don't know, I mean, there's all, I think the foreign press has a little bit more of a mark about it at the moment than the domestic press. But if true, then offering half the money plus the threat of another 5 million, it's not a serious offer. Right, we play Leyton Orient tonight. I'm not sure if that's being televised anywhere. If I can see it available anywhere that isn't too illegitimate, I'm going to be careful what you say with these things. I'll post a link on theboyhotspur.com or even on the YouTubes. So that's it for now. I don't think we're going to get anything else today. I'm really wary about the Orient game. I've already seen some prospective team sheets jotted down by people, and they're talking about Scarlett and Troy Parrott playing together up front. Yeah, well, Orient aren't rubbish, I know that much. But by the same token, I don't want to thump them 3-4-0 and then be told that like we dealt with the Gareth Bale and the Dele Alli nonsense towards the end of last season, that we're back, because we've beaten a lower side. It's disrespectful to everybody, and it's again adding to the flavour of the disinformation. So thanks very much. I'll speak to you again soon. Keep it on.